Take yourself on a date and go to a beautiful restaurant, cafe, wherever you want. Maybe create the space in your place and get excited about where you see yourself in this year. Like, by the end of the year, we can truly move mountains. Miracles are natural and things can change instantly for us if we give ourselves the permission to see ourselves in that light. But I think when we can first off allow ourselves to dream and then you get so excited about it, that is something that's a very fun place to then create from and then build upon. So giving yourself the permission to dream, visualizing this dream life that you see and getting so crystal clear.
Aisha, Sehra, welcome to Passion, Love, Pursuit podcast. I am so freaking excited to have you on the show. We were talking about so much offline, but now to get into the real topic today, I just want to acknowledge you right now, honestly, because I just freaking adore you. I don't know you that well, but I adore you, just the energy you put into the world and your passion, drive, your discipline. I just really want to acknowledge that it's so admirable to me. And I know just so many, because there's a lot of people that say they want to do something and they desire a lot of things in their life, but they don't actually go after it. And I know you're a woman that went after it and you're doing so many great things in the world today. So thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. That was so genuine, and I'm equally so excited to be here. I feel like we've been fangirling each other online for so long. We've also gotten to meet in person, which is amazing. But I just, when you're around other like powerful women, they're in your world. I just adore following you, and I think the exact same of you. And it's an honor to be here, and I'm so glad we got to make this happen.
Thank you. Well, okay. So as I mentioned, you're very disciplined and you are a woman that gets things done. So I would love to just start there. What is your drive? Like, where does your drive come from, your discipline and your work ethic?
Oh my gosh, what a question. Miss Passion, Love, Pursuit over here, just going in. I get this, a lot of people ask me this because in my early 20s, I moved to LA, from Canada, and I didn't know a soul out here. I didn't have anything, honestly, like no family, no money, no nothing. And I wanted to start a company out here and really pursue like the dream that I had on my vision board from a young age. And I've always been wired like that. And I've been asked this question a lot. So I do think about it. I'm huge on journaling and like reflection and creating solitude every single day to this day in my life. And when I think back and I think about it, I think it really stemmed from a young age. From a very young age, I'm grateful that I started listening to podcasts like Lewis Howes. I picked up books that my mom would give me like a Deepak Chopra book and like with that other book, the 7 Spiritual Laws. Like she would put these things in front of me and I actually really gravitated towards it. And I think from a young age, developing practices like journaling, gratitude, a morning routine, meditation, just like scraping the surface like very lightly, because now I do these things in my daily life and I'm like, oh, I was truly just doing it on like such a light scale back then. I think developing those skills from an early age definitely was the biggest driver, I think, for later in life when I started applying all these things, like moving to Los Angeles, wanting to build a business, having limiting beliefs, and then also telling yourself like those aren't truly the beliefs and then readopting new beliefs. When I think back, it all stemmed from that time in my life because I got to then apply all the things that I love to read about and nerd about from a young age in the personal development space.
That's amazing. Well, so parents listening, this is a little clue that maybe you should slip some of your kids some of these personal development books, because honestly, if I read those things earlier in my life, I think I would have probably head down a different direction. So I think it's so useful if you introduce it early on, because I guess she's proof that she actually was able to apply it into her life. And so that's remarkable. So I did an intro at the top of the episode, but can you just tell people what specifically you're doing? What brought you to LA anyways in the first place?
Yeah. So I now live in LA. I have a PR agency and we work with brands and talent. So we represent thought leaders, founders, entrepreneurs, and intentional influencers. I always say, like, I like to call them thought leaders because we rep talent, but talent that stands for something, that has a message, that has a brand. Everyone has a brand, everyone has something to put out in the world, and we get to rep. I'm so grateful. Everyone our company represents, I'm truly obsessed, and they're all so different in their offerings and what they bring to the world. And basically, our company, we help them scale that with all the PR elements associated with it. So, especially Emily Ford, who's a mutual friend of ours, she calls it, she's like, Aisha, you truly do the 2024 PR strategy. As we're recording, it's the end of 2024. So it's kind of a new age PR. I really focus with clients on what are the things that are going to move the needle forward for them. What are the drivers of getting their message, their brand out to the world? And that's speaking, that's getting them on podcasts, that's getting them at the right events, forming the right relationships when they're traveling. A lot of the people that we work with, they're in LA, but they might have a place in Miami, they might be in New York. So really tackling in all the target cities of how we can really spread their personal brand and get them in the right rooms, spaces, stages, podcast platforms, social platforms with collaborations to scale that. And then we also have the brand side of the agency where we work with various CPG brands and help them through influencer marketing campaigns, PR mailers, their events, a lot of just different offerings there. But it started back when I was 21 with a vision to move to the States. And long story short, but when you want to move here and you're not from the States and you're from another country, you can't just move here. You have to get a visa. And that was probably, without going into detail on that, unless you want to, that was the thing that catapulted taking immense action quickly and putting so much skin in the game because I did the E2 visa, which Canada and the US, they have a treaty where you can essentially like start and scale a business in the US. And if it gets approved and this company is doing very well, it's really stimulating the US economy with, employment and job opportunity, and clients, US brands and companies want to hire you. They're like, okay, this person can live here on this visa because we see value in them being here. So
Wow.
going through all of that at a young age was really like such a catalyst because I had to open up a business in a new country, state, understand the landscape, create like when you go into the entrepreneur path, like you have to have your unique differentiator, right? You have to show like what you're offering in this target market. How are you going to be competitive in the landscape of other agencies? Go as far as investing in the company, getting clients to show the US consulate, like, okay, if we give this girl her company the visa, this is like they already have brands and people that would want to hire. And doing that at a very young age, I had no choice but to it's like sink or swim. So
That's
when you put so
amazing.
much skin in the game, you kind of like it puts you on a path. And I am a really big advocate of like always pushing yourself to put yourself outside your comfort zone because that's where the magic happens.
Exactly. And I think that's like the key message here is especially as we enter a new year. I know so many people have something on their heart that they want to do or bring into the world. They have a mission, they have they have a
Mm-hmm.
purpose that they feel they want to fulfill. And I think a lot of people, once it gets difficult, they like shrink or these stories come back in like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
not good enough, or how can I compete with this? That's already out here. Whatever the stories may be, there's always stories. And so people quit. And I think that's one of the biggest messages you could share with people is like, you need to, number one, put skin in the game. So I think sometimes we have to make that investment because usually we don't commit to things that are free. Like there's plethora of knowledge free on Google. Obviously, this is a free podcast, but
Mm-hmm.
skin might be making the time to do something, like committing to something. But I think what is so key is sometimes we just have to do the darn thing, even when it's hard. But how does one do that when they have all these stories? Like, what do you think are the first things they should do to take more action on their dreams?
I love that. And I love that we're going in on this because I always say it's so easy to be grateful when things are going great. It's so easy to be high vibe when things are going, the sun's shining, you're like financially, your bank account looks great, you're like married or you're in a relationship that's going so great. But when all these personal development practices that we'll get into like really pay off is when shit hits the fan. It's when, like you maybe financially you're not in a good spot or you're in a pickle or your whole environment, you look up and the environment you're around is not serving you and you're like, what am I doing here? I'm not happy. I'm around people who like are not my people. Those realizations, those really dark times are the times that I'm like, okay, lean in because this is serving you. This is in your movie for a reason. And when you get to then work through it, it's like when all the blessings happen. So steps on where I would even start with that. I'm huge on so many different practices, but I think it all comes from your internal programming, right? Your mind. Our mind can be the most positive, nurturing place that we live in, or it could be a negative place that keeps us small, keeps us stuck. And I would say like one of the first things, I have a couple, I'll give like 3 different things.
Please.
So number 1, I would say is self-awareness and being super clear. I think that we should really give us permission to dream. And I love to do this with visualization every single day. And if you don't do it every single day, you don't have to do it every single day, but carve out time in your life. And especially with it being the top of a year when this is going out, like take yourself on a date and go to a beautiful restaurant, cafe, wherever you want, maybe create the space in your place and get excited about where you see yourself in this year. Like by the end of the year, we can truly move mountains. Miracles are natural and things can change instantly for us if we give ourselves the permission to see ourselves in that light. I think a lot of us, especially myself, even now that I'm playing a lot bigger in my entrepreneurial path, like 7 years later, I even catch myself like, oh, like who are you to dream about having like that house in the hills in LA, or like having a penthouse in New York? Like who are you to that those like voices come in? But I think when we can first off allow ourselves to dream and then you get so excited about it, that is something, it's a very fun place to then create from and then build upon. So giving yourself the permission to dream, visualizing this dream life that you see and getting so crystal clear. And if you are a visual person like myself, I recommend like creating a vision board and seeing the images of it and putting in the pictures that you see. Like if it's a number that you want to see in your bank account, if it's a social media page, just as examples, like if it's a page on social media with like a certain amount of followers, a blue check mark, whatever you see for yourself. If it's a certain car, like get fun, do it in every way. Do it in like the materialistic stuff, but also do it on like the day-to-day life of like who you are going to be. And when you can see it, it's very fun. And then you can play that movie in your head because your mind has to arrive before you do. So I think allowing yourself to even see the big dream is number 1. The next thing I would say is affirmation is huge because that was, especially in the earlier stage of me even taking a leap, it was the biggest thing that really helped me was rewiring my belief system. So I would, and this is different depending on what stage you're in or what your blocks are, I would look up affirmations online, especially in the beginning, and then I would make my own. So I had a lot of money blocks, especially moving from a small town to Los Angeles, where Erica, you live here. You know how the cost of living is way different than if you are in a small town. And I also, within the industry that I was in the environment I was in, I was around people who were, playing the game at a very big level, very different bank account than I had at 22 years old. And I had to really reframe my beliefs around money, around abundance, around prosperity, around the journey. And I would make affirmations around every area that I was working through. So if it was around opportunity and getting clients for my agency, I would say that, you know, opportunity and prosperity comes natural to me. Everywhere I go, I prosper. I would look up affirmations online, but then I would make them my own story, because there was some that I liked, some that I was like, oh, I would like it to be like this. And I would adopt maybe like 3 to 5 that were very true for me. And I would write these out daily. I would write them, put them on my walls so I can stare at them when I was working. I would just always be reframing my vocabulary. So then even when I was like out shopping at the time in Los Angeles and doing groceries, and certain things were maybe too expensive for me at the time, I would reprogram the way I would say, oh, that's too expensive. How I wouldn't say like, oh, I can't afford that. It would be like, right now, this isn't a good investment for me, but this is, or it will be soon. It's so long ago when I was doing like the money work like that. So I can't like, I used to be so good at reframing. And then you would get so strong with it that when I was around people at the time who also had like the lower beliefs, I would call them out on new ways to reword what they're speaking, because what you speak comes into reality, and you have to be so cautious with what you're putting in and what the universe is listening to what we're saying.
I was actually going to say, before you mentioned that, I just want to interrupt, is watch her language. Like, I notice you're saying, I get to do this. I choose to do this. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that immediately when you started talking. So when you're familiar with these like ways of reframing thing, you notice when other people do it. At least myself, I always notice that. And when people say, oh, that, like, constantly saying, oh, that's so expensive, you'll start to notice other people doing it, and then you're like, oh shoot, I do this too, or whatnot, and you'll be able to catch yourself more often. So
true.
I've noticed your language is phenomenal.
Even I will mention like our mutual friend and someone who was on your podcast, David Guillaume. He's a client of my agency, and I like am so grateful I get to be around him. And one thing I've noticed that is so true right now in my entrepreneurial path is like we can subconsciously block our desires because we're subconsciously taking actions or have this little tone that's subconscious that's blocking the abundance. So I've noticed this with myself lately because December, for some reason, has been the craziest month in our agency as we're preparing for the new year. You know, a lot of brands, I think, are like revamping with their PR strategy. So we're just really busy right now. We're getting ready, hiring. It's a busy season, and it's wild because we're getting a lot of like new calls and new interest, even more than what we have. And I'm very stretched right now. And every time I'm like, wow, my calendar, or oh my gosh, like it is insane right now how busy things are before the holidays. I'm like, wait, hold up, girl, to myself. I'm like, you need to stop right now, because this is subconsciously blocking more abundance from coming in with you being like, every time a call gets booked or a new call with a new lead gets added to my cal, my subconscious is like, shit, like I'm so stretched. So it's so much being aware. And I think like a part of like this is going to be even like creating space for yourself to tune in, because I can feel the subconscious like thought, because I'm so like tapped into myself, because I've developed a solitude practice every day. And like, that's why I think there's so much power in like creating, even if it's 10 minutes a day to yourself. Because we're so inundated with everyone else's thoughts and beliefs and opinions that we need to tune into our own.
Amen.
And the last thing I will say to seal the 3 is prayer. I'm huge on faith and really trusting in a power beyond my own, whatever you believe in, God, source, the universe. I just really advocate for believing in a higher power, because life is not easy. And let's face it, like even when we hit, like we do a move outside our comfort zone, like right now in my entrepreneurial path, I wish I could go back to what I thought was the hardest time in my path when I was going through building a business from the first stages. Because as you grow, there's more problems, more things that come into your path that you need to be a more evolved version to deal with these bigger problems. And even people who I look up to who are big founders and multi-millionaires, billionaires who have problems, their problems are even crazier than what I deal with. And I think it's so much of like trusting that what's in your movie is here for a reason. And every single day when I pray, even if it's a minute where I can say a prayer to start the day, oh my God, it completely changes my state. And that state change changes everything that I experience in my reality because I just have this trust. I don't know, but I trust and I believe. And you can always pray to get out of your own way. I'm just there's so many experiences in my life where I prayed to get out of my own way with like so many things, and miracles have happened.
Oh my goodness. So we could end this episode right now and you've already gotten a massive amount of value. Like what you just shared is so, so good and so powerful. And you're even like, I'm even hearing this for myself to remind myself these things. You mentioned the power in pausing. And I think you are so right on when it comes to that. I say this all the time, like as you mentioned, we're so inundated with so many different things that we can't even notice what's really running the show in our own life. And so just that practice of pausing and giving yourself even 10 minutes, even 5 minutes, like even my skincare practice in the morning is sacred because it's that time to just flow into the day opposed to like rush to do all the things, which is my biggest pet peeve ever. But I think that there's so much juice and value in that pausing so that we could understand like really what's running the show. So I appreciate everything you just shared. Like I said, massive value. We'll just end the episode now. No, I'm just kidding.
I love that. I want to also add in one thing there because I just feel like we're both too, but I want to make this like super helpful. And one of the things that I even am experiencing right now, I'm huge on always being super real with like, no one's perfect. Even these like gurus who share like their principles and all the things, it's like, yes, it's amazing. And then we think like, okay, well, they're incredible. They can do it. But, for someone like myself who's done the pausing and in the routines currently in my entrepreneurial path, I'm like sometimes feeling really guilty for pausing and like creating that space, especially when things are so crazy. My morning routines, I'm like, I gotta hurry this up. I gotta not create the space. Like, and the thing is, it's like what I've been doing. I started working with even a coach this month, and because I'm really ready to make 2025 my best. I want to be my best every single day. And if you have someone to call you out on your own shit, it's the best thing because you can improve, right? You can put your ego aside and look at your blind spots to make you better. And one of the things that what is helping me a lot right now with even giving myself permission to create space, because I feel like there might be a lot of moms, partners, busy business owners listening who are like, damn, I wish I could take 10 minutes, but like I have all these things to do. I actually recommend doing what she told me to do, is making a list of all the ways that why giving yourself that 10 minutes. And I think it's helpful to do when you see the value of doing it. But I know the value for me of a solitude practice. I know I have business breakthroughs. I know I have billion-dollar ideas. I know I get all the answers clarity-wise with my work. I know I can feel a lot calmer for the day, so I'm better to my team. I'm better in my meetings. So I know all these things logically, yet I'm like, okay, there's no time. So writing out the value of like Erica carving out these 30 minutes every single morning to fill her cup, why that is valuable, and proving your mind, like proving yourself, like this is why it's so impactful. And then when you look at that list, you're like, wow, okay, it is actually, I need to do this, because if I don't do this, I'm not going to be the best mom to my kids. I'm not going to be as energized to play with them. I'm not going to be as responsive in my meeting. I'm not going to have the breakthrough ideas for my clients. I'm not going to have the energy to do X amount of things. It's really helpful to like kind of reframe it in a different way. So then you think it's a disservice to yourself and others because you're not taking the time for you.
Yeah. I mean, that's what the first episode of this season was about, that, like giving myself the permission to pause the podcast and my intention behind it, why I did it. But I also had to give myself grace because I did have those stories like, oh, how is this going to affect? Like I had all the things that I felt a lot of like anxiety and fear around it. But, and I trust me, it ate me alive in some regard. But I also had to like kind of in the practice of return to like, you did this for a reason. You had an intention behind this. You're going to come back even more powerfully. Like everything is going to be golden and great. And, everything happens for a reason. And you chose this intentionally. And so you could choose to intentionally come back to the podcast with more energy and, more fire under your belly, whatever it may be. But I think that's the thing is like, it's a practice that I know we'll all have those stories running around like, oh shoot, but I have to do this and it's going to hurt this. But I think again, it's like, we can't show, it's totally just a story because first of all, if you're not feeling your best, if you're running on fumes and you're burnt out, you're not even going to show up to the business well or the podcast or the meeting. So it doesn't work anyway. So we might as well just give ourselves the permission when we need it, like answer that 100%. Call, right?
And like, what if we play the fun what if game? Like, say Erica called me up and she's like, hey girlfriend, like, cause this is why it's so important to have people in your circle, whether that be a coach, a friend, a podcast that you tune into that's going to hype you up. Because what if we had a talk and then I was like, Erica, well, what if these 3-month breaks, you're going to have the breakthrough idea that's going to be a new idea, a series on the podcast to launch that is actually going to 10x your podcast next year? Or what if the guest that you had booked that you're now pushing to January because you're taking this break for you, one of the founders you're going to have on is going to be obsessed because you're so elated with such good energy and a glow about you that he's going to offer you a $50K brand deal on your show and sponsor the whole thing. Like, what if all these other things happen? It then gets you excited about like, wow, okay, I need to honor self and take the break that I need.
So good. And so talking about clarity, because I think knowing yourself of when you should go this way or that way is all about clarity. And you talked about you had a vision and you had to execute it and you had to put a whole plan together. It wasn't like haphazardly or anything. So what would you say to somebody that, okay, we're entering a new year and somebody has something on their heart they want to bring into fruition? Besides the 3 things you mentioned, how can we start to then craft the plan to then execute?
I love this question. There's so many ways I could go about answering. And I love that you said it because clarity is so big, right? If you don't know like what your vision, even getting super granular with that vision, if you don't know like exactly what it is, like if it's you want to start a brand, like what brand, what's the niche, who are you helping, how are you helping, where do you want to be, what numbers do you want, like even if you don't know the numbers, like it's so important to like research and then understand, okay, what is this plan? And I think the biggest thing that could be really helpful here is like once you don't have to know everything A to Z. That's the first thing I'll say is like, you don't have to know the whole plan A to Z, but what you do have to know is the next best step. And when you take the next best step, the next best aligned action, then the next piece comes. So it's like taking it in stages. But one of the biggest things that came to mind when you said that is I think that everything out there in the world that we want to do, there's probably someone who's doing something in a similar way or has created some or can add value in some way. So whether you want to launch a new company in the hair care industry and it serves this problem, there's probably someone out there who's built something similar or has expertise in that space. And this is where I'm such a big fan of learning from people who walk the path and are one step ahead. That's why these podcasts exist. So you can listen to Erica's podcast and she's had every expert. I feel like you crush it. You've done so many amazing interviews. If there's someone who's like a leading expert in X field that you want to learn from, you can go as far as like listening to their podcast. But I like to go as far as even trying to get connected with them and then going for coffee with them if you can, if you have access to them, or finding someone in your network that has done it. Maybe it's just, let's start super basic, like maybe it's just another founder, because that founder is one step. And even just having that conversation, and maybe they just own say you want to start a product based business, maybe this founder isn't the same, they don't own the same product or like same industry, but it's a product, it's a founder who started a product based business. He can then, or he or she can then connect you to someone else, and it can grow from there. But you can almost start building up like all this research and data to understand what your plan would be. And I think that the community that we have around ourselves, it's like leverage it, lean on it, and reach out, and you can really build such a tribe of people who can really show you A to Z what they did and cut your learning curve in half.
Okay, so what would you say to somebody that feels like they don't want to come off as going to have coffee with this person to nitpick, and find out all the, hacks or whatever it may be to do the thing? What would you say, like, the right way to approach somebody that way?
Yeah, and I think it's a case by case depending on who it is. And cuz also I'm huge on also doing it through warm introductions with friends. But whenever you go into any meeting, any new connection with someone, I always go in with the intention of like, okay, how can I serve them? Because I think people need to feel an equal value exchange and really feel like they're not getting like the energy and life sucked out of them. People love to help. That's like, people do love to help and be of service, but I think the biggest intention and thing that I like to always step into any meeting I go into is, how can I serve and add value? Everyone can add value, everyone can help, and even you reaching out to them, you have so much value to offer them. And I think if it's someone who is, someone who's playing the game at a really big level, and you think that they're very busy and it's a harder push to like get them to, maybe go for a 30-minute coffee with you, I would think through, okay, who is this founder, entrepreneur, thought leader, human that I want to get in front of, and what value could you offer them? Maybe they have a book. Could you buy a bunch of their books and put it in the right hands? Or do you have a platform? Can you really get on their radar from promoting what they're doing and really enhance posts on social media? I think it depends on who it is and then what your value is, but figure out how you can add value to this person and get on their radar, I think really works for the bigger players. And then going in with a pitch to kind of showcase how you can serve them, and by you serving them, they'll want to help you back. But it does depend on, I think, different people, because some people will just want to serve and add value, and some people you can get connected through friends. I know founders who I will connect founders all day long, and when they find like, oh, Aisha's introducing me to so and so, I would love to meet them because I'm sure they're a good human. It's really easy to go through like warm connections as well. But once you have one connection, I'm telling you, good people know good people. They can connect you to someone else. It kind of can create because if you do this one meeting with someone and learn from them, they might be like, oh, you know who you need to talk to? My good friend who's a beast in manufacturing or in editing or in design. You should connect with him. Let me introduce you guys. It kind of can create a ripple from just one person.
Yeah. Oh, so good. So what do you think you do differently that most people won't do to get where you are today?
Oh, I I take a lot of action. I'm very big on the plans, the vision, the affirmations, the prayer, all of it. But I'm also, every single day I wake up in the morning and I'm like, it is a new day, a clean canvas, and it doesn't matter what I did, you know, yesterday. They were like, today's a new day and a new adventure, and I need to give it my all. I think that every single day that we get to live life, it's a blessing. And no day, I sound so cheesy, I know, but I'm literally like this to
Amazing.
friends when I'm at coffee. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is a blessing to live. Like, look out. In LA, it's sun is shining. We never really get cloudy days. Like, there's palm trees. It's such a blessing to live here. And I think when you work so hard to build a business, build a brand, I always say, like, if you're going through a hard time or you don't have some people maybe come from different upbringings or different resources to create things. But when you come from when you don't have a lot of resources, it is such a flex because you have such different gratitude when you have
Oh, for
wins.
sure.
And I think about that all the time, like even just with the visa stuff, like because it was such a journey to stay here. And then now that I am a Canadian here running a company on a visa, I don't take a day for granted because I'm like, wow, I'm so grateful to be able to like live in this country. It's truly the land of opportunity. And I'm so grateful. I'm not going to take this day for granted. And I think that there's like so many experiences and upbringings that we all come from. But like when you work hard to get to where you are, you got to keep that perspective. And even like as I'm growing, I'm always telling myself like, okay, but don't take this for granted because it can change tomorrow. Be so grateful for every single day, and that fires me up like no other.
It's so remarkable. And if only we could live even half like that every day with that attitude, because it really does change everything. And I remember like I recently saw you at an event and you had a car crash.
Yeah,
You
before.
still ended up getting to the event like right after it happened, which is so amazing. But you came with a good attitude, and you came with this like, oh, I wanted to see my friends, and I wanted to support and be here. And it's just a whole different way to look at life. Is you're not letting it, little things that happen. I mean, getting a car accident is kind of a big thing, to be honest. I don't know how bad, I
Yeah.
forgot how bad it was. I don't remember what you said, but I think your car was it towed away?
Well, it should have been because
Oh,
I ended up getting it there
oh
back to
my
where
gosh.
we live, and yeah, the next day
That's good.
it was bad, but you know, it could have that whole thing could have ruined my day and my experience of the rest of the day. And then when I went, I was like, I'm gonna be the most high vibe because it was not easy to get to the event, and I was
Yeah.
late, and I was like, I'm gonna make the most out of this. So even if I'm here for 30 minutes, I'm gonna be the most high vibe, high energy, and have a great time because my day was so crazy, and I have to deal with a nightmare of car stuff tomorrow.
Yeah.
So for it's all your perspective, and it's crazy because when you take on the action piece, when you take aligned action, when you show up in the right energy, that's what changes your reality of like
Oh,
what you experience
completely.
back. Because if I would have come to that event and been a downer, then that would not have been good either.
Oh, so good. You're hitting me with like a lot of self-reflection, just so you know. It's a great reminder, I think, for all of us to hear a lot of the things you're speaking about, because we know this intellectually, but it's a different thing when we put it into our life. So I'm happy that it's hitting me. I hope it's hitting anybody else that is listening right now. Uh, so setting yourself up for success, what did you have to add in your life and what did you have to remove?
Ooh, I love that.
Mhm.
Okay, setting myself up for success. And I'm going to be very much of like this season now that I'm in
Yeah.
because I'm going through a lot of growth and a lot of tools that I did. I'm like, okay, wait, now you have to change things up. One of the things that have been, I think, monumental for me is all the things with the personal development, the morning routines, carving out time to do those practices that I said. Basically, the biggest thing for me, I think, is the vision. The vision every single day, knowing, okay, where am I going? And being so crystal clear of like, okay, if I want my company to be this with this many employees and this is how we work with brands and this is my lifestyle, like I want to be bi-coastal, New York, LA, I would get so crystal clear in my mind of like making that very comfortable for me. So it didn't feel foreign when I arrived. It's almost crazy when you do the vision work, how when it happens, you're almost like not excited anymore because you've already been there. Like with my E2 visa renewal this year, it was wild. When I got, long story short, I had to go for an interview to Canada for my visa, but I was so busy with work. I was just like, I do not. I'm going to pray that, and I'm going to see an email coming through that my interview gets waived. Like, I'm going to visualize this email every single day for a year, because it was a year once I was like waiting for this interview for a year. It's crazy. But I would visualize this email coming through every single day, and see it from the US consulate being like, Aisha, Sehra, you are eligible, or your interview has been waived. And my lawyer was like, that's not possible. Like, it's black and white. Immigration is not like, it's not spiritual, okay? It's very much like, this is funny. What the processes are. And I was like, I understand, but I believe that this is going to happen. And anyway, when it happened and I got that email, it was wild. Like, I was shocked. I actually shed tears of joy, but at the same time, I was like, but yes, this is what I saw. So I think the biggest thing for success is seeing your success, seeing yourself in that. And then I know it stems into beliefs and everything like that. And then the thing that I'm taking away currently, or like removing right now, and I guess adding in, it's like my need to people please, and then adding in place of that, boundaries. One of the things that got me to where I am, I think, with what I do, like with doing PR, we didn't go into like the nitty-gritty of my work, but like with PR, you have to be everywhere, and you have to be connected, you have to be the connector. You got to know how to be that, like that source for people, and make connections happen. And I think that a lot of my story was like, I am a yes queen to everyone. And now that I'm in a different stage of my life where, you know, I have a team that's reporting to me, I have our company, we have like so many different people we're serving. Like, I also have my own brand, and coffee and a good vibe, and events, and a family, and other things that I want to do. I'm like, wow, I feel like there's not enough hours in the day, but there's billionaires out there who have teams of 100 and have all these things. And you know what they have? They have better boundaries than me. And the thing is, I always thought you can't be a nice person with the boundaries. I thought that, you know, I'm being mean if I'm not giving someone 30 minutes of my time. But, you know, there's like, I've been really listening to or reading a lot of quotes around boundaries. Like, and there's this one that's stemming with me that's, boundaries are the space where I love me and you love me at the same time.
Oh, love it.
And it's so beautifully said. And I just keep right now my affirmations all over my phone that I look at and that I write down in my journal, are all around like feeling comfortable with reframing how I view boundaries, and being comfortable to place them, because creating more space for myself and saying no has been the biggest blessing right now. So I think, to answer that question in a long way on the taking away, I'm actually saying no more. It's wild, because I was saying yes to every opportunity, and that served me. I was affirmating for opportunities everywhere, it comes to me. But now I'm saying no, and that's like the biggest thing. So not being afraid to say no, creating boundaries, and that's like what's really serving my success right now.
And you know what? I think that will serve a lot of people today. That alone is giving yourself, again, the permission to say no and to meet yourself where you're at, opposed to spreading yourself everywhere. I remember before I took a break on the podcast, when the last episode was sharing 44 lessons that could radically change your life. And one of them was, you can't like honor your season. You can't be everything all the time, everywhere. You're something like that, to sum it up. And that's the thing. It's like, you can't do it all. There has to be boundaries. There has to be like, whatever you say yes to, you're saying no to something else. If you say no, like no creates more space, right? So I think a lot of people need to hear that. And so I love that you're doing that for yourself, especially in this time of massive growth. I think it's essential, right?
Oh, it's so essential. And it's wild how, like, it's wild how people respond to it, because being someone who's used to being yeses for everyone, people are like, sometimes people will bite back and not be so kind to your no's, your polite no's, or not respect your boundaries with love. And I think that's been a whole other area of growth, of like, that's their work, not
Yeah.
mine. Like,
Actually,
that's
can I
their
talk
trigger.
to that? Because I think this is
Yes,
really
please.
key is talking about aligned. So this is a big
Mm,
thing for me, alignment. And when somebody doesn't respect your no or doesn't respect your boundary, that they get all like,
yeah.
I don't know, their feathers get ruffled or whatever it may be, and they react to it. That says more about them than you. That it also means that maybe you need to look at this relationship, friendship, or business or whatever it may be, and actually reevaluate, is this aligned with the vision and where I want to go in life, this person or who you're having this conversation with? Because I think that it's so disrespectful to not honor somebody's boundaries. Of course, if it's as honoring themselves, Does that make
Mm.
sense?
Yeah, and I think people need that reminder often, and it's great. I love that you said that because we could take offense to it, right? And it's so important to hear what you just said because it completely changes like how that would hit. Because for me, every time that happens, it stings, right? And I'm like, oh my
Right.
god, then you want to go back into your people pleasing mentality and be like, wait, no, actually, I could do this, but it's like,
Right.
no.
No. Yeah, just no. So good. Okay, Miss Habit Queen, let's talk about this. So, if you're not you're going to be following Aisha after this because I love her stories so much. And I told you this, like your stories are so aesthetic and so pleasing, but
Mm.
also what you'll see, what she shares on her social media is she's very good at her habit stacking. And I think that is partly what gives you the ability to be so successful. So, can you talk about how do you do habit stacking? Are you time blocking or what's your
Mm.
method of madness?
Yes. So I love this question. I love schedules. I love habit stacking because I think that we can all be superhumans. We can all do it all, be it all, have it all, but it's all up to us. And I think that discipline creates freedom. And with our schedules, when we understand ourselves and we can create a schedule and a map around, how we operate best, we can actually get so much done in a day. We can move mountains in a day. We can achieve so much more, but it comes down to knowing ourselves. So I think that that's the biggest thing. Like knowing, for example, like when you are the most productive, how your brain works, when you hit a wall in your day, maybe what you need to do from a wellness standpoint, like how much water you need to drink, if you drink coffee, matcha, how that needs to be prepared, like how you need to work out. If you need to work out for 30 minutes, I'm going through that right now, even always innovating on these things. I'm like currently going through the process where I'm like changing up my wellness routine so I can find my energy better because I was experiencing some brain fog like earlier in my work sessions and I was like, what is this from? So it's
Yeah.
so much about trial and error and what I will share on what I do, it's just what works for me, but I think everyone it comes down to like how you operate. But knowing like when you focus best is the key. But for me, every single morning I've learned that I need to have that first chunk of the day, not chunk of the day, but first hour of the day for my mental routine and my workout. I need to move my body in
Me
the
too.
morning. And personally for me, like even when work is crazy, I notice that when I take even 20 minutes, 30 minutes to move, oh my gosh, I'm such a different person and my energy is so up regulated and my appetite is more controlled. So I already know like, okay, if I do this type of workout when I'm eating my first meal and what that is. So I have a lot of like habits I've built in with like my first meal is always protein. I always make sure it's at least 30 grams of protein. It could be any time, but it has to be a protein rich first meal of the day. But prior to that, movement is big. And in the movement that I think Erica is talking about, a lot of people will DM me about is my habit stacking with my treadmill. So I walk outside or I go to the gym on the treadmill or I just got a walking pad. So depending on your environment and where you are, every morning if I depending on like what my workout is, if it's Pilates, if it's weight training, I will do that and then I will do a block on the treadmill, and I do this so often. I did this
Okay.
last night as well. And basically, when I'm doing this habit stacking on the treadmill, I'm responding to all my client threads. We have different group chats for all of our client accounts. I check in with my team. We have our like company chat. I go onto socials. I do all the postings I need to do on our pages. I check DMs. I check all my texts. I do it all. I do all the things on the phone. And then if usually
While
that's
you're moving, which
while
is,
I'm on the treadmill
yeah.
walking. And it is the craziest thing because it uplifts your energy.
Mm-hmm.
You get so many steps from doing that. And maybe it's 30 minutes, maybe it's 45. If I just want to do habit stacking, I'll do an hour and just walk. And I'll do it at a pace I can maintain in a moderate or low incline because I am doing like so many messages. And I'll even voice note as well. Like that's how I respond. I'll be voice note, it'll be writing. But if I'm outside, the habit stacking is mostly voice note responses, so it's probably to my team and a call. But if I'm on a treadmill or on a walking pad, it's like I can go more with like the text responses, and it is game changing to my energy. I feel so much better because if you're on the West Coast operating a business, oh my god, you wake up and you're already 3 hours behind.
Yeah.
And I just feel like this really calms my mental space, and you move, it uplifts your energy, and you feel like such a win already with the day. And I think that sitting is like for me in the morning, I just don't want to sit. Like I'll sit in my meditation and then after that I need to move.
Yeah. So good. I love that you do the habit stacking. That's amazing.
And I
And
theme my
especially,
days too. That's another thing.
what was the other thing?
Another thing that I think might be helpful is I live on Google Calendar and I theme my days. So, like right now, it's because it's like a busy season. Like for me, Monday is always work from home, like Zooms all day at a certain time. And I book all my virtual meetings and calls. We have team check ins, client check ins, like all that day. And I know what time of day then, like I'll usually go stack back to back. And I know around 4:30 or 4 p.m. I need a walk break again. And usually that is habit stacked as well. But knowing what days you can be doing different tasks. So on Fridays, I will do podcasts like today. I will do podcasts and I'll do in-person meetings. And this is just the schedule right now. I'm sure in 2025, I'll theme my days a little bit differently. But like Thursdays, I have certain requirements of what goes on the calendar. And then also when I look at my calendar, every type of thing, like if it's a call, if it's a virtual meeting, if it's an in-person meeting, if it's a workout, it's all in there in the Google Cal, and it's different colors depending on what I put that as. And over time, your brain will look at your calendar and just know, like, oh, it's a lot of blues. For me, blues are calls. Or oh, it's reds. That means I'm physically there. So it could be an IRL meeting, an IRL podcast, just a coffee with a friend. It's red. So I know like, okay, I got some reds. I'm probably getting fully ready. I'm going to be in my car. But it's just very helpful. I can do like a whole thing on this, but
Yeah.
those are
Oh,
some big
so good.
things.
It's so good. And I hope everybody's taking a lot of notes because this is so useful. And I think, I mean, we're listening to somebody that is really building a successful business. It's already successful, but she's scaling it. And so you have to have these type of strategies in place so you don't lose your mind. Because I think, you said we could have it all. We could do it all, right? But we have to have a clear vision of what we want to do, and we also have a strategy to do it, because I think if we're just haphazardly, again, going through life, it's not going to get all done, and we're not going to have it all because we're going to be like losing ourselves in it. Right. So I think all that you're sharing is so, so useful. And I'm definitely going to implement some of these things in my life. So I thank you for that. But talking a little bit more about time management. So mastering your time, because to have it all, you really have to be a master of your time. Is there a time that you shut off? Meaning, like in the evening, do you have a shut? Well, you go to a lot of events and everything, so I'm sure
Yeah.
it changes as it goes. But do you have like an evening routine that you're like, this is my time, like nobody else has access?
I'm really, truly being so candidly. I'm hoping I can listen to this in 3 months and be better about it, but I'm working on that right now because something about my morning, I'm really good with that. Like the first hour, I won't look at my phone and I'll use it for like my meditation that I'll play, but like I will not be on my phone and responding to things until I've filled my cup a little bit because I'm not reactive then. I'm in such a different state. But in the evening, I'm very much working on developing a better system around it because I I feel like I'm always on in the evenings, whether it's a client dinner or an event dinner or a PR event. Like tonight, I even on a Friday night, I have a big like work event. And I feel like it's so easy to do that. I naturally go to bed early because I start my days at like 5:30. So I think by default, like 9 p.m., I'm not probably not on my phone because I'm like about to go to bed and I'm like maybe I'm not on my phone for like email. I'm not looking at my emails. I'm not great with my boundaries with my phone. I will be so honest with that, but I don't like respond to emails after it's not even great, but like 9 p.m. I will not be on, but I'm pretty much very online in the evenings, but trying to be better at it and working on that. But some of the best things that I do in the evening that have been really helpful is my phone's on do not disturb. So I do not see any notifications pop up and I don't see any of it. I will call my family every night. And then that really helps me because whenever I'm talking to like LA friends, it ends up turning into some type of business thing conversation. So I'll call my family a lot in the evenings and just like actually put my phone down usually by 9 p.m.
Great. Okay. Talking about time blocking and habit stacking, I realize we're a little over on time. Are you good?
Yes.
Okay. Because I just realized that I'm like, usually we don't go over, but this is such a great conversation. I know there's so many gems in here for really that could serve a lot of people. So, I wanted to ask a little bit about the business aspect. We're on a podcast. Podcasts are huge right now, and they're only getting bigger and bigger. Is that your biggest ROI for your clients, or would you say going to events, or what is the strategy you feel is really serving the clients you work with today?
Okay, so I think in different ways, like there's different like ways to answer it depending on like who they are. But I think when it comes to scaling a client's brand message, which then will equate to sales and a larger spike in audience growth, it has been podcast over everything, like over speaking events, over everything. It's podcast, the right podcast. So when you have a good fit where like the client goes on the right outlet with the right audience reach and their community is engaged, it is crazy with like what it does for and it's hard to, we don't necessarily like give them a set. I don't really this is personally my opinion. I don't like giving the host unless it's like a commission thing, like a set like link that has their name. So we don't track it from each one, but we see a spike. And you always see that when it's the right fit. So I do feel like the podcast medium in itself, when it comes to like PR events and speaking, I see that as a needle mover when it comes to just building relationships and being out there in the know. So people are like, oh, this is someone maybe our company should work with for a campaign, or it humanizes you. It puts you in the space. It makes it easier for us to then like, pitch you for other opportunities because you're in the space where people are like getting to meet you in person because digitally everything people are one way, but then when you meet someone in person it's a completely different vibe. And I think it's important to be top of mind for brands, for other talent, and be always building your network. And I see invaluable benefit in building your network from being at the right events and being in the right rooms. So I think that's like an invaluable kind of position when you can go to the right events. But for monetary wise, I would say the podcast. And then if the talent who we work with is someone who has a large platform, not even a large platform, has an engaged community. if you have a community and you have people who love what you have to say, then it's very fruitful when it comes to brand partnerships. Very fruitful. It is crazy how you can make money with working with the right partners in established lucrative partnerships, where I always say it's a win-win, where the brand is winning and you're winning because it's such a mutual exchange in value. You can make a lot of money monetarily from the right brands, but you have to have that authentic community for sure to be able to get those big, big numbers.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Gosh, there's so much goodness in there. I'm just going to ask 2 more questions because I've asked you so much. But
No, I love this.
no, this is just I just want to honor your time. So for somebody that is trying to bring something into fruition, like I said, the beginning of this year, what do you think would make them stand out the most online? Or what would you say to help them maybe have a different approach for standing out online?
This is a good question. There's so many ways you can go about answering it. I think there's 2 quick things. Like, I think they both come together, but it's knowing what your value is and what your unique proposition is. And it's interesting you say this because as I look at the new year, I'm really trying to think through right now, even for myself, of my personal brand, stepping into that in a big way in the new year. I'm like, okay, Aisha, what is the one thing that people come to you for advice for? Like, what is that thing? Like, yes, you're a founder, you have an agency, like people want to know about this, but like, what is the thing that you love to share about so much that you can go blue in the face with sharing about because you love it so much and you're deeply passionate about that people also like? And for me, I've noticed like, oh, people are loving like my schedule posts, my habit stacking. That's just like naturally what my DMs are always about. Like more routine lists, more schedule shares, and more about the things you do to make the calendar, because there's so many things within that. Yeah. And how you do what you do with the agency. Like they don't really care about like how I'm working with clients, but they care about like what I'm doing to myself to make me able to scale a company. So exactly. I think it's knowing like what's your thing that you're good at. Like, are you like, or what's your thing in general? Not even what you're good at. Like, what's your thing that people want to know from you? And then being consistent with that. So I'm like trying to understand that with myself. So I'm like, okay, the schedules. Okay, that means in 2025, I think every single day, every other day, maybe I'll just do a screenshot share and make it aesthetic of my calendar, because always clearly aesthetic. Everyone is wanting that. And I think it has to be, as I think through and I'm researching and I'm understanding how people have grown, the consistency. So you can't make it something that's not you, because then it's going to be really hard to be consistent with that routine. And I'm like, you know what? The schedule is so me. Like every single day, my calendar is color coded and done. So why aren't I sharing that?
Yeah, I love that. And it's so true. That was one of the things I said when I said I wanted you on the podcast. I'm like, I want to talk about habit stacking and you know, a strategy to creating your day basically so it could be successful. So I think it's so useful, and I think a lot of people could use more of that, because I think sometimes, like I said, we're just kind of going about our days opposed to like intentionally living our days.
Yeah, and sometimes we don't even know that people want that, because I've only realized that since I started posting it. Because I would say like habit stacking, and like one girl DM'd me 2 days ago and was like, can you explain habit stacking more in your next story of like what you do? And I was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. Like, what do you mean what I do within it? Like, how nitty gritty do you want me to go? Because you think that people don't want to hear it. But then when you start sharing, it kind of helps you innovate the wheel on your content and your messaging more.
Well, you're going to have a lot to share on this episode about this with your audience, because this is that's really what I wanted to keep it around, because I think we need more of that. And of course we need, as you said at the top of the episode, is reframing our thoughts and the way we look at life, and the words we use and everything is so powerful to even create what we want to bring into our life. So just in closure, first of all, where can people find you, find out more about your agency if they're interested in working with somebody for PR? And just more of your goodness.
Oh, thank you. Well, the best place is Instagram. So at Aisha Sehra. I think it'll be linked in the show notes. So then my personal brand is honestly the best place for everything like routines, habit stacking, day in the life, all of that. And then growthesocial.com is our website. That's the agency. And I'm launching the Instagram for it, where I want, because I'm like, why don't we have a lit Instagram for the company?
Oh, I didn't know that.
So I'm making a really cool one where because I feel like Instagram is such a search tool. It's cool, like the websites are still alive and well, and it does well for us, but like I think social is such a fun way to document, especially for my business, because it's so much of like the fun events and also just like really cool collaborations and campaigns we do. So I will have that as well, but it'll all be on my personal brand, so you can see it.
And everything will be in the show notes. She also has a amazing podcast, Coffee and a Good Vibe, which
Thank you.
Sounds so. I love the name of your podcast. It like just that it tracks me. The name of your podcast.
Thank you so much.
But closure, I always ask my guests, if you were to share a piece of wisdom, a life lesson that you've learned that you just feel you need to shout out to the world, what would it be and why?
Oh, wow. What a question to end with. I think I always, whenever I get a question like this to close any podcast I'm on, I'm always like, okay, do the first thing that comes to mind. And I think the first thing that comes to mind today in this moment is on divine timing. To trust the timing of your life and to know that everything finds you and everything occurs in divine timing. So wherever you are in the season of life that you're in, to not question it, not feel bad about it, not feel guilty about it, just honor it and trust with it, because I'm telling you, the blessing that's coming for you in 3 months, the blessings that are coming for you in a year, they're all divine. And they're meeting you exactly when they're supposed to meet you. They're not meeting you a month earlier, everything in divine timing. The partner, the relationship, it all is happening in divine timing.
Ah, so beautiful. Thank you so much, Aisha. I just adore you. That's
I adore
all I
you.
gotta
We're
say.
gonna have to in 2025. We are hanging a lot more.
Yes, I would love that. So appreciate you. Thank you for making the time.